This is very painful for people because of their neighbor's judgment.
Just as with people who claim to have encountered a heaven-like afterlife, for those who have been plunged into darkness, the experience is a very intense and personal journey.
The first thing I can remember after the accident is waking up in hell. The vision of fire all around me. Didn't feel the flames, didn't have a body. There was no day, there was no night. There were voices. I was doing whatever the voice of Satan was telling me to do.
And all of a sudden it was just really dark. It was a huge, huge space. And these forms were just full of despair and their own moaning.
It was still black until there was a little tiny white spot. And I thought, well, there's the light at the end of the tunnel. This is my way out. Instead, that little white dot came up, becoming a skull. It was too small to be fearsome, but it came up brighter and brighter until it was huge. I felt like his mouth was going to take me with him.
The thing that I remember that was so frightening is going into this tunnel, and I felt like I was being entrapped in cobwebs. And at the end of the tunnel, these faces, these demons.
These guys were evil. It frightened me. I started saying, you know, where's Jesus? Where's Jesus? Am I going to hell? I was begging. I said, God, please, please don't leave me out here with these spirits. I don't want to be left out here just wandering aimlessly. And I was just trying to hurry to get back to my body.
I'm in serious trouble. I can now try and squeeze my eyelids, which is helping clear some of the fluid, but as I do it stronger, I can feel the poison going back through the capillaries, back into the back of the eye sockets. I can feel poison being pumped back there, and my eyes getting heavier and heavier, to the point where I realize if I don't close my eyes for a few moments and have a bit of a break here, I mean, I'm going to be no good for anything. So I thought, well, I'll close my eyes, have a sleep for a few moments, and then try again. As I did that, breathed out, a bizarre sensation happened. The impression of it was like there was a release, or like the battle to stay alive had finished. I had no idea until talking to the doctors later. At that point, they came back to find my eyes closed, took my pulse. I was gone. They had lost me. I had literally gone. For a period of 15 minutes, I was just a dead corpse, a piece of meat. And they actually moved me out of the accident emergency down what it looks like to be a part of the hospital or morgue or something. Moved me actually bodily down the tropics. They don't leave your body lying around too long. So they moved me out of the accident emergency down into another part of the hospital. And so, as for me, I had no idea I'd been pronounced clinically dead. To me, I was asleep. The trouble was, as I closed my eyes, which, you know, things go dark, I suddenly found myself in a standing upright position, wide awake. I knew I was awake. The trouble was, it was pitch black. And my first thought was, why on earth did those doctors go and turn the lights out in here? I mean, that's enough to spin anyone out, you know what I mean? Why on earth would they do that? What kind of hospital is this? As I stood there, wondering how long I'd been asleep for and why the lights are out, you know what I mean? 1 minute it's a hospital room, next minute it's pitch black. I thought, well, don't freak out. Let your eyes accustom to the dark. Maybe you've woken up too quick. So I kept looking, thinking my pupils are dilated. No light. Couldn't see a thing. It was pitch black, like a dark room. So, well, okay. There must be some light in here somewhere. So I turned around 360 degrees, checking out to see if there's some light. Couldn't see a thing. I thought, well, I'll go and just find a wall, you know, find a wall here, get the light switch, turn it on, see where we are. As I went out to my right, I couldn't find the wall. I thought, that's weird. Have they moved me? Maybe that's why the lights are out. They've moved me down to the general ward while I've been asleep. I've woken up, the lights are out, they don't want to wake the other patients. So I thought, well, I'll go back to my bed, find my hospital bed, should be a lamp near there, and that shouldn't wake too many people up. So I started moving back to the left, groping around looking for my bed. Couldn't find it. I thought, great, you idiot, now you've lost your bed. How on earth did you do that? You know what I mean? You would talk to yourself, so I'm groping around trying to find my hospital bed, can't find it, and another thought comes into my mind. It's so dark in here, you can't even see your hand in front of your face. I thought, well, is it that dark? I brought my hand up. As it did towards my face, my hand seemed to pass straight through my face, like there was nothing physically there. I thought, that's impossible. You can't miss your head, it's not that dark. 2 hands. For both hands up to where my face should be, both hands seemed to pass straight through. So where's my arm, my body, my hands? As I went for different parts of where my human form should be, there was nothing physically there. It was like you're outside of your body. But before I could think too much about that, I'm thinking, well, what is this place? What's this darkness? As I stood there, I began to tune myself to it. I could sense the darkness had an evil presence, a cold, encroaching evil pervading the atmosphere. Like it wasn't just physical, but there was a spiritual darkness, you know what I mean? Like it was evil in there. And as I stood there, I began to sense something out to my right looking at me. In front of me, I felt like invisible eyes of something or someone checking me out. You ever felt that? Ever kind of felt like when you're walking home at night, sometimes someone's checking you out and you get a bit of a chill through your spine? Well, you intensify that about 100 times over. I'm standing there sensing not only something, but there's something moving towards me. As I feel the movement in this darkness towards me, I move back. As I do, a man screams at me to the right, out of the midst of the darkness, and says this, "Shut up!" I went, "Shut up?" I said, "Nothing. What are you talking about?" You know, responding to him, I braced myself for a hit. As I did that, another voice of a man screamed at me to the left. He said, "You deserve to be here." "Deserve to be where? Where am I?" Another man in front of me. "You're in hell. Now shut up." Well, I didn't believe in hell. I was an atheist. I believed hell was a religious trip put on people to scare them into their religion. I thought all religions are based in fear. If there was a hell, it'd be a party time. You know what I mean? The jury headbang and stuff. You know what I mean? Sex and drugs and rock and roll. You know what I mean? I'm thinking that's what it'll be. Party time. Everything you can't do up here, you can get away with down there. I thought I'd rather be down there than up there in the clouds with a white sheet on, having some little... given a harp to play, you know what I mean, and some little fat baby with wings on firing arrows at me. I thought I'd rather be, you know, down here partying than up there in the clouds playing the harp or something. I mean, really. But see, both of those concepts just went out the window. I'm standing not down in the party time with the lads. I'm standing here outside of my physical body. Pretty hard to grab your bear down there, isn't it?
Right.
Can't find your face. I mean, and jokes aside, you wouldn't want your worst enemy to go there. It was like I was standing there. I thought, man, this is like a holding tank. This is like, I mean, this could be real. It's not the place where your physical body goes, because I realised my physical body must be up in the hospital. You know what I mean? That's where, for a guy, it's like you're suddenly getting a download of reality. This could be the pit. Yeah. And these men are in the same place. And your thought is like speech to them. You could be there 5 minutes to 5,000 years. You can't get tired. You can't tell time. You could actually be here. This could be it.
He bought his favorite gin and 3 bottles of sleeping pills, and then drove to a remote bird sanctuary near his home in Anchorage, Alaska. You swallow the pills one after another.
Right.
3 bottles.
Right.
You're drinking the gin.
Right.
You're in the front seat of your car.
Right. And I get a flash of light, and I'm suddenly outside, and I'm thinking, how the heck did I get out here? And I noticed that there's no color. Everything's gray. And I put my head back, and the moment I closed my eye, there's another flash. And I'm in mid-free fall into a pit that's pitch black.
His lifelong wish to return to heaven had ended in a personal vision of hell. So it was hot.
It was extremely hot, very humid and dense. Smoke coming out of the ground. I am split into 7. 2 of me, I'm living in my past, and I'm experiencing all the people that I had met throughout my life. They would come to me and get within my face and start pushing and screaming, and I would relive a moment that I'd caused them pain.
Then he says he saw the suffering his death would eventually cause.
My mother, I was there when she collapsed, finding out I was dead from a suicide. My daughter, she was 18, and she's sitting on the floor contemplating suicide because I wasn't there for her. It was on my hands and face, weeping, not just crying, but weeping for Jesus to save me.
How did you get out?
I was pretty much lifted up by the back of my neck and slowly, very slowly lifted out of this pit. A voice told me, "You have work to do, and if you continue to live the life you are, this is where you're going to spend eternity."
I knew where my heart was, and so I took the gun and I aimed it directly for my heart because I was not going to miss. And I wanted that gun to send me into eternity because I was so desperate for my pain and my suffering to end.
So you pulled the trigger and there was a loud bang, and then what happened?
Pat, when I pulled that trigger, I knew my body was dying. I felt the blood rushing through my lungs. Death gripped my body. I became blind. I became deaf. And as my soul left my body, I began traveling faster than the speed of light. And I began falling and falling and falling. And all of a sudden, this explosion happened on the inside of me. It was as if there was like a sulfuric type acid burn that consumed me in every way. It was so hideous and terrifying. There are no words to describe the level of pain and the type of burn that I was experiencing.
What was it?
It was hell, Pat. It was what the Bible describes as hell. It was the fire of hell. And when I looked around, not only was I in a place of death, but I now had become death. I was no longer in a place where there was peace. I was in a place of total torment.
Were you terrified?
I had become fear.
Oh, you've become fear.
I had become a being of fear. You know, the Bible describes that death is the absence of God.
Yeah, yeah.
And so in the absence of God, in the absence of anything good, your soul actually transforms into a being of fear, which is the opposite of love. So my being, my person, turned into a being of fear, a being of pain, a being in total isolation.
There wasn't anybody else around you.
Pat, I could look out and I could see thousands, millions of people that were all around me, but I was unable to communicate with them.
Was it like a lake? Was it molten?
It was like a, I don't know that it was like a lake. There was a, it's hard to describe. I guess you could say it was like, it was a huge sea of people. Yes, and there were many, many chambers that were all around me. And all of the people that were there were in the same formless being, screaming out in agony, in total terror, in a hideous scream. Then there was no end to it, Pat. There are no words to describe how horrific this was.
They were screaming in agony.
They were screaming in agony, and because they had become total beings of death. Yeah. And that's hard for the physical mind to understand those things. But when I would look at it, I remember looking at an individual, particularly, and they were as close to me as you are. And when I saw them, Pat, I knew everything about them. I knew every sin they had committed. I knew my knowledge about their life was completely full. I knew everything they had done wrong. I knew their thoughts. I knew their emotions. I knew the will. I knew everything I could think upon. My wisdom was in its fullness. It was like a Harvard degree instantly, you know. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter. In that hideous state of a burning torment, the only knowledge that mattered was that Jesus Christ was Lord. And here I am in this state of agony indescribable agony. And the only thing that mattered was that I never surrendered to the lordship of Jesus Christ.
Was this like regret in your mind as part of that fear?
Absolutely regret. There was so much regret and shame and guilt that I had believed a lie and that I had believed the deceit. And when I looked out across the lake, across the heavens, I could see the entire universe, Pat. And it was like the earth was magnified. And there was a mutual feeling, a mutual understanding of everyone, the thousands and millions of people that were there with me, that we did not want anyone to go where we were. We wanted people to go back to earth and warn everyone, don't believe the lie, do not be deceived by your enemy, do not come here.
Is that in your mind prior to this that ever could have seen anything as horrible as that?
No, no.
Never.
And now I read the Bible and I see the Bible how it describes hell.
Yeah.
And I look at my experience, and there are no words to describe what I experienced, Pat.
Was there any end to it for these people?
No, there was no end.
No end?
No end. And you could look across the Gulf expanse, and you could see heaven. You could see the peace, the joy, the love, the wholeness. And you knew you were never going to experience that. Because time does not exist in eternity. Time does not exist at all. And so you know you are there forever with no relief. The burn will never stop. The screaming will never stop. And the only thing you can do is hope that no one else will come where you are.
It's the most horrible prospect when you think of it. I mean, the human mind can't conceive of anything as absolutely awful as that.
Well, it was on about the 20th night, and the Lord told me, He said, you may not see me, but I'm here. He said, there's something you have to go through for this revelation, because you've got to know that you know that you know that this is real, like John the Revelator, he said. And when he said that, he was gone. I couldn't see him. And an evil presence, an evil demon, they came over and they touched me, and they said, your Jesus has left you. And when they did, it was like 1,000,000 razor blades went through my body. And I was in the spirit form. But I had all my senses, you know, and my body was at home on the bed. And I understood everything. I understood why people were in hell, the moans and the screams of the dead. And then another demon came up, and they said, we're going to put you in this compartment, and Jesus has left you. And they were laughing and mocking. And I was put in an area where the fire was racing towards my feet in a jail cell, and Sid, it burned. I could actually feel it burning me, and I was in the spirit. And it was burning my legs, and it was burning up my legs. I was screaming and screaming. And I said, Jesus, where are you? And I began to quote the word of the Lord. And as I did that, the demons would scream, and they would back up. And I'd say, the blood of Jesus, I'm redeemed, I'm saved, what am I doing here? Because it was like I was a lost sinner. It really was. And then,
now, from what you've told me, you were able to feel
oh,
pain.
yeah. Oh, my goodness, yes.
What were you able to smell?
The smell of stench of sewers, smell of burning rotten flesh. The air was so thin you could hardly breathe. And the awful part is the cries of the dead. The moans and the groans of the regret because they missed Jesus. And demons remind them that they could have had Jesus. They could have been born again and been saved from eternity damnation.
Could you tell me one person you spoke with there and what they said? Or that Jesus spoke with and what they said?
Jesus spoke to many. But the main one that really was coming to mind was a woman, okay? She used to be a minister of God's Word, okay? And her husband committed adultery. He fell from grace. And so he went to her and told him that he had been tempted and did the sin. Would she forgive him? And she told him no. And he went to the pastor and he asked the pastor. They all forgave him and prayed for him because he was tempted of the devil. And the woman got very angry, and she said, here I am preaching God's Word, and I'm so holy and he's so sinful. But what happened, she quit reading her Bible, she quit praying, and she eventually let Satan in her heart with hatred and malice. And she took a gun and she killed the other woman, and she killed her husband, and she killed herself. She ended up in hell. And the affair had ended a long time ago, but she had such bitterness that Jesus spoke to her. He said, you should have lived what you preached. You should have forgiven. You should have understood. That's what Jesus told her. And he said, instead you yielded to the devil and sin entered into your heart. Hatred and sin. That's what he told her.
Let me ask you this. When he was escorting you through hell, did some of the people try to talk to him?
Oh, yeah.
And tell me some of that dialogue.
Okay, many of them would, and they were in different nations, okay, different languages, but he understood all of them. And when people go to hell, Sid, it's whatever lifetime of sin they committed. If they were liars, they're put with liars. If they were
so there's like categories.
Yeah, like in the Galatians, the book of Galatians, the 17 works of the flesh. If they were murderers, they're put with murderers. And as Christ would walk, they would reach their bony hands up because they were skeletons full of dead man's bones. They didn't have hair, flesh, blood, or organs. But they could talk, they could turn, and they would scream and they'd say, put the fires out. Don't let us burn anymore. And they would cry for repentance, some, but some would curse the Lord. Some would scream at him and say, why didn't my neighbor warn me? Why didn't they take me to church? And you would hear the cries of the multitude.
Is there any reversal? I mean, would someone that is committed to hell, can they ever get out of hell?
Absolutely not.
In 1974, Patricia Young was pronounced dead on arrival at a Renton, Washington hospital. The cause of death, a gunshot wound to the throat.
Well, there was a crisis in my family life that was quite difficult. And what I did that was drastic was I took a gun and shot myself through the neck. The next thing I remember, I was suspended in a void of some sort, but I was completely unable to move. And there didn't seem to be anything at all around me. These little creatures, little beings, grotesque, hideous little creatures came up and they seemed to be preparing me for something. They did horrible things, and you could feel the things they did. They would make holes in me, anywhere on my body, even in my cheek, in my eye socket. And they put anything that was gross or nauseating in these holes. And they got great, tremendous delight out of it. Then they departed. They didn't seem to be there anymore. Right then, I had the sense that someone was coming up behind me. I could hear this extreme, raspy, heavy breathing, and it was getting closer. And I knew instinctively that, without questioning it, that it was absolute pure evil. And it was getting closer and closer. But in the very next instant, I knew it was going to be within my view, and I screamed out as loud as I could, "Oh God, please help me." And I opened my eyes, and I was alive.